at the Rise Multiversity channel. Today I am here with an incredible woman who I have been honored to befriend and to know over the last months. And I am very thrilled and excited, and as I said, honored to be sharing her with all of you, because I feel she has a very authentic and profound journey that needs to reach all of us. Okay, so the name of this show today is The Emerging New Feminine Force, Finding Our Way Through the Distortion, One Woman's Real Life Voyage. Christine, I'm going to introduce you, and then I'll bring you into the fore here. So Christine Anderson was the moderator of one of the most visited forums chronicling the human awakening on the planet, the Avalon Forum. Here is her story through her direct experience. Christine is a full-force, feminine, intuitive Earth Empath. She cultivates deep love, and through her creativity is both poet and muse. She has come to understand that she is one of the emerging female transcendent template weavers and empowerment coaches. Recognizing at an early age an acute longing and sense of discontent, she took the path less traveled and forged a powerful female journey. She shares great empathy for other travelers, especially the timid and suppressed, who she often recognizes as the bearers of special gifts. Her empathy has led her to study a wide array of material that could be described as the healing arts. She has come to recognize her gifts come from within. Christine has experienced spontaneous remote viewings, which have amplified her understanding of our lost and hidden abilities. She deeply believes that we must recover these inherent abilities to be way showers and inspiration for those who are awakening. Welcome, Christine.
Wow. Thank you, Sienna. Thank you for that introduction. Having written some of those words myself, I listen to them and I hear them reflected back to me. I do endeavor to embody exactly the flow and the energy that is within that. So, and thank you, Sienna, for being my friend. I clearly recognized with you that I met you many years back, that there would be a relationship, and that you were one of the few females, or one of the few people I'd ever encountered on the planet that had gone as deep into the journey as you have. So we'll explore today together in a way, some territory. Thank you.
I have been waiting for sisters like you to emerge so that we can really dive into what's happening and make headway through the disinfo and the distortion, and really be helpful in this transition, because there's so much redirection, manipulation, co-option, and harvesting on so many levels. And you were right in the belly of the beast, lady, being one of the moderators of the Avalon Forum for 3 years. I know that this put you at the front lines of the Chronicle of the Human Awakening. And I know it's a really deep subject, because I've been close listening to the unbelievable dramas that have unfolded there. And, I'm not into exposing dramas and talking negatively about anybody. That is not where we're coming from at all. We're really coming from, and the truth shall set us free. There are a lot of innocent people being harvested in these forums. There's a lot of strange phenomena, and there's a lot of beautiful connection and awakening. And I think that it's a great service to share, and I honor you for being brave enough to share, because I know there's a lot of politics involved, rattling around in the skeletons and all of that. And we really are here just to bring clarity, just incredible clarity through our hearts, through our connection with the earth, through our connection with organic life, and through our connection with everyone who's listening to us today. So Wow, it's just such a gigantic plethora of experience that you've gone through. You just absolutely amaze me of how you've ridden through all this. And I know it hasn't all been a walk in the park, although you've brought incredible joy and love through it. So, what can you share about your experience there that has been a bit hidden from us?
I'm going to start out with the beauty and the experience and the things that I learned on being first on the forum. Very intrepid entry I had into forum life. And also at the same time, what it gave me on a personal level. It was like looking through an amplified lens for me. And when I became a moderator on the forum, there's what's going on in all the different threads, the people, the interactions, the people that come in to disrupt, so many things that it took me quite a while, actually a process of the 3 years of looking at the forum, understanding the people there, understanding how there are some manipulations going on, what those manipulations are in the alternative, what we call media, or in the awakening groups that are forming. First, there are some of the most incredible. I'm honored. I really am honored to have been part of that forum. I met some of my dearest friends there, some resonant souls that I cherish those relationships. Also, really looking deep into, we're talking about something like 800,000 threads on a rolling forum. Some of the information there is astounding. It truly is a chronicle of the awakening of our humanity. There are things there that also I will note right now as I'm speaking with you, Sienna, that what I started to find where a forum stops and where a forum ends, or where for me, at least on a personal level, it stopped being a place that I wanted to give my energy to. Just a note, and I mean, I think all of us in ourselves, when we're measuring where we are in the world, we're always giving out something and we're always receiving back something. So I learned through the process of writing on the forum myself that I was actually putting myself out there, also to see myself, right? I would put out words, thoughts, energies. I would meet people, but I was also getting a reflection back at myself. In other words, for me, it was if I'm speaking from the high self that I can reach to, I was also testing myself. So in that way, the forum served me. The information on the Forrest Raw thread, Wade Frazier thread, there were so many very, very intelligent people putting out information that had somewhat of a following. What I started to notice for myself, though, was that those threads would eventually die off, or they would become buried in other threads that came up. And I don't understand it. It's something that's in our morphic field still as humans, even those of us that would say that we're somewhat awake or we are awakening, that whenever controversy stirred, like whenever there was some sort of controversy on the forum, within minutes there would be hundreds of people watching that thread develop. And I couldn't really understand what was going on. That here are these incredible informational threads that would maybe have 20 or 30 people at the most viewing them, and then they would die away where there was nobody even researching that material, and a controversy would come up and it would bring in people like bees to honey. I don't even know how that happened. And so what I started to notice was that there were also, we could call them agents, whether they were sent agents, I wouldn't be able to say, but I would say you could put people over there known as shills or trolls, or that would purposely start feeding information into the forum, and it would stir a great deal of controversy, and it would take a large mass of the consciousness within that forum, and even people viewing from outside of it, and misdirect it. I say misdirect it because when you're spinning a lot of time wheels trying to calm people down, when you're so entranced by somebody else's story that you forget your own, when there's not really a dialogue, when there's not something positive going forward, I would see a derailment. I would see a derailment of the energy. And I started to analyze it for myself, and as a moderator, of course, we would share what we were seeing. I, at that time, was getting a lot of images coming through. I was actually seeing like a hand that would be throwing out marbles, and I would be watching the members of the forum always chase the same marble. It was like they had us so wired that they could see how we were going to be reacting. And at some point, I really determined that for myself, that actually being in that space where all those energies are being directed by other forces, that I needed to step way back. And where forums stop is that they're a great place to meet people, they're a great place to develop your own understanding, they're a great place to gather information. However, if they're not doing something positively forward, building, creating, empowering sovereign behavior, that's where it started to lack for me. And you may ask me anything. There I can give examples of that if that need be.
Let me ask this. So there you were in the midst of the forum. I know that you bonded and had extraordinary connections with people there. You midwifed a number of people through very turbulent waters. How did who were the people that you did bond with? What were their vulnerabilities, their wounds, their innocence, and did that leave them open for this kind of harvesting to some extent?
Well, many empathic people are drawn to a forum like Avalon, where they may be isolated in their personal lives or have been through traumatic mind control operations.
A lot of MyLabs, a lot of victims of ritual abuse, a lot of people that are experiencing interdimensional interference, very psychic, a lot of indigos, crystals, who are lost, who are searching for connection, some really high level souls, a lot of young people, that just incredible energy from what we've discussed.
Yeah, and I didn't, all of those terminologies, I do have an empathy specifically for that type of person, most likely from my own past experiences. MyLabs, MK Ultra survivors, people currently in programs, satanic ritual abuse, all of that. So these people who are quite often misunderstood, can't really find a place in the matrix, have high abilities, they're highly capable beings that have a lot of perception, remote viewers, find a home in a place like Avalon, and all of a sudden they're with others like themselves. It's a very rich and very psychic environment, because not only what's going on the threads where people are writing, but what's going on psychically behind the scene. Lots of beings are making, lots of us were making connections. And you've got in that mix too, when you've got the MyLab element or that type of person, you've got a certain amount of, let's just call it, I don't want to use the word paranoia because I didn't really get into paranoia, but you've got a lot of caution going on there. So people tend to speak in not straightforward ways. They tend to admit something. They're trying to help you understand who they are, but they're not being really direct about it. So you start to learn to read energy. And that's when I started connecting with quite a few of the members. And out of that was born this very deep part of me that was, how do we help each other? How do we actually literally provide a safe place? What is the healing that's needed here? And we did start a healing group. From that point forward, was the group of women moderators on the forum at first, where we actually started doing energy healing, you could call it shamanic healing, holding a very trusting, loving space. Now you ask me another question, Sienna, I'm just going to roll with it a little bit here.
It's fine.
During that time of this wounded heart, right? I can pull myself into that space right now, and I can feel that wounded heart, right? And it's vulnerable, and it feels like a child, and it's looking for a safe place that it can be. And so there was and there are many, many members on the forum that are like that. And we're sharing energy. We're feeling for each other. And yet, there's another element there. Okay? There's another.
I just want to put in one thing there, that you became in a way, a midwife to these people, and it drew from you a real core, the best of the best of the female, the compassion, the empathy, the true heart, and the desire to break through into our sovereignty. And it really brought forth your mission and your vision, and it was a real rebirth for you in a lot of ways. I've seen that rise up in you and be manifesting in you, honing it, because you're still working with these people on an almost daily basis. Yeah.
Well, it was a natural, I would call it I say we sort of stumbled into something. I mean, it wasn't a planned, anything, but we discovered something, let's say, through our opening of our heart, through being able to see the traumas that people had gone through, to see the challenges in front of them. What we discovered was by holding a field of trust. And it became something that we were doing together. It was a totally non-judgmental space. And so we knew without even talking that our egos took a sideline. There was a part of us, we all have an ego. We're not saying we're beyond ego. But by joining together, this field that was created actually was, the field itself became the healing. It wasn't even us that was doing the healing, because we opened up something. And every woman and and the female men that have walked into that space do understand the dynamics of it. And so we started also more deeply connecting through our bodies with the earth energies, with the earth herself, with that wisdom, that intelligence field. So it wasn't like we were trying to direct it. We were holding it. And that holding of that field became very powerful. It became a powerful force. And it really, if I had my friends sitting here with me, they would all be nodding their heads saying that we were actually the observers, the holders and the observers. And we would start to see the effect of that. How the earth herself, how that intelligence, this life that's here, would respond with us. And, some ways we would understood that we were holding a resonance, we were holding a vibration, and the more aligned we became with that vibration, with that aspect that is, we can name her Sophia if we want, we can name her Gaia, but that we can say the divine feminine aspect, that life-giving, all-loving, unconditional. That was the energy that was producing these very healing effects. And that I can't say that we went into it in any intellectual way. We just were there. We found it. We discovered it. We rejoiced with it together.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And this later has grown into Earth Empaths, correct?
Yeah.
It's a group that meets regularly. You have a blog, a website, and you're about to open it up soon through Rise Multiversity, because can you go into a little greater depth and share maybe one experience of the kind of thing that you discovered? Because this is a very in-depth co-creation with Sophia in her correction in a lot of ways. And this wasn't, it was people just doing it from getting out of their heads, getting out of, calming the ego. Like you're right, we don't get rid of the ego, but we calm the center, and connecting. And some of the healings and experiences you have been extraordinary. Could we hear a specific, anything that comes to mind?
Some of them a couple of them are published actually on YouTube, and I can share that later. I want to make one differentiation before we leave the aspect of the forum. And I want to say for sure that I'm not speaking about Project Avalon Forum as anything detrimental towards the forum. I'm just speaking of forums themselves now. Okay, and I'm very, very broad way. We as humans in this looking for our freedom and our sovereignty, we create collective consciousness no matter where we gather. And so I've come to a place myself where, as an individuated being, I choose to leave a collective consciousness. And the reason I chose to leave that collective consciousness is because it actually had so many elements to it that I couldn't participate in anymore. So,
okay, do we need to go there first, perhaps, before we dive into some of the Earth Empath phenomena? How do you want to roll with this?
yeah, I really do want to take that piece of it, just because it's so essential in my own growing understanding, is that, and I'll say it in a really simple way, and then we'll see if we want to go deeper with it. I've come to understand through that experience of being, all of us can look out there at the mainstream matrix right now. We can see all the things wrong with that, right? I mean, we're not in agreement with so much of it. I don't even need to name it. Vaccines, control, the monetary system, all of that's been pretty much brought to the surface. So that's not where we are, but other sub-collectives get formed. We go into unacknowledged agreements, right? There's unseen contracts that are written, right? And so when I started to differentiate, again, myself from that collective, when I started to maintain my own sovereignty, I said, well, okay, then I need to cut a new path here, because by somehow unseen, I was a participant in that collective. And I could see, and this was actually clarifying for me in the moment, okay, whether anybody else ever saw it. I tried to share it, but I had very little success. I could see that within that space, these very beautiful souls, these beautiful harmonic hearts that were opening up, that all wanted to hold and help each other, there was another element there, okay, that had come in, and it was actually harvesting the heart energy. Now, I hadn't seen that before, and it really made me step way back into myself. I felt like these beautiful souls, okay, that were finding each other and loving each other and supporting each other and doing all the beautiful things that we as humans are capable of doing, they were missing a certain element, which I would call sovereignty. It was where the collective became more important than the individual.
Mm-hmm.
And so
how did that manifest? Like, if there was certain information, then people would get into big fights, and suddenly there'd be polarized and take sides, and it was like different warring factions, perhaps.
Yeah, that's on the surface level where you could see those things happening. But I mean more on the unseen level. Okay. You and I know, and we could maybe talk about this today or another day, that we're actually, when I say a template weaver, that we have to actually see all the old templates that have been thrown out there and the corruption and the distortion that you speak of. So what I was
like, a very high-pitched squeal that's hitting your mic. Would you?
Mic? I don't know. I'm hearing it in your space.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so maybe I can talk a little lower. Well, see, I'm hitting into the psychic energy of that right now.
Yeah, that was a nasty little squeal there.
Yeah, so let me try to just bring my energy back down into a more, in the layers of the distortion. Right? There's some really obvious ones, and then there's some lesser ones and lesser ones. They get finer and finer and finer. And as we start to tune our own vibration, we start to pick them up, the undertones, if you will. And so a collective agreement, like any forum, I won't even use that one, is that there's an agreement made, not necessarily written or understood. So in other words, there are certain things that could be questioned and some things that couldn't be questioned. And that's when I decided that I needed to withdraw my energy for some time from forum life. I actually created our own forum. It's very small. But the intent of that forum is actually for other empowerment of others. I'm not sure if I can describe it quite well enough right now, so you can ask me a more pointed, more directed question, see if I can get into it a little more.
Well, I would kind of like to hear a little bit more about the kinds of interference that was running. Were there, you were experiencing a harvest. Can you get into any more detail? Energy vampires, without, we're not going to, create a, a storm of caca here and, be sensational, which we could easily do and probably get 10 times more hits on this podcast than what we're going to do. But nonetheless, because there are some very famous individuals and the emerging, secrets, there's so many cutting edge people, and they keep, a lot of the new superstars come through that birth canal of that particular forum. And then it seems that some of the well-trusted people, again, no names, ended up having a psychic vampiric relationship with some of these innocent, open young people who are trying to find their way, which is really horrible. And I know that as one of the birth mothers, this is what grabbed your heart and caused a huge 180 in your participation, because I know how much you loved that forum, and it's been very painful to have to walk away from that. But can you give any more specifics about what you experienced in this harvesting?
Yeah, whenever a human emotes a high emotion, a huge emotion, or emotional wave, and then when a collective group of people, especially with, let's just say, high capabilities, I could see that energy was being harvested and misdirected. That's the best way I can put it. So, watching I worked, and I also did some, process work. I actually did sessions with people that had been in the current MK Ultra mind control and the secret space program mind control programs. Something I'm not trained in. I fell into it. I found that my empathy was such that I could actually hold a space for them to start retrieving their memory. Or feeling safe in expressing it. Maybe they'd already retrieved a lot of their memory, but they could feel safe now to start to tell that story. But these are if we look at it just from an impersonal perspective, these people that are currently programmed are actually telling our story about each of us. We all have deep, deep levels of programming. And so when they're...
Can you be more specific? Because some of our listeners may not even know what these programs are.
All right. Yes, I can. The most tragic thing to me, the most poignant thing to me, the most personal thing to me is how fractured we are. How truly fractured we are. We're not whole integrated beings. We're using a tenth, if that, our ability as souls, as true beings. So the people that I was able to get to know and love, and I love them all still, had been in this current lifetime. They had gone through the MK Ultra programs. Okay, what that actually does is it purposely, through torture, takes a child and starts fracturing them. And it's horrendous, and it is going on right now. So I will speak strongly to that and to those that participate in that. This is not, in my words, it's not allowed on my watch anymore. That's where I really come up. But becoming friends with these people, these beings that are still under, the control through electronics, through invasion of their sleep bodies, through just about any way. They were so fractured torturously, okay? You take a child, right, and you start fracturing them off through pain, through sexual abuse, through any number of things. The human soul, to save itself, or that life force, will start fracturing, right? And most of the people that I know that have, at some point during that, say they made a safe place for themselves. They found a little tiny essence of themselves, and they maintained that. But they're not all integrated, right? It's a very long, arduous process sometimes, or it takes a great deal of time, or a very talented person to help you reintegrate. So what I was starting to see is how much on a forum that had brought in many, many, many people, okay? This isn't, I would say that the fundamental harvesting that came through that particular forum was that there were more and more of us, I say us, that had come to the forum. We were doing even private subforums. We were sharing our stories. We were creating an environment of safety so that it felt safe. And I realized at one place it was the farthest thing from safety that one could be. It was actually all that information, all that outpouring in this one place was actually the perfect place for that energy to be harvested. Also, each of us, myself, I can't say that I'm free. Okay, I can't in all honesty say I'm free. But I was watching that. I could start to see where the programs were running in people. It was just something I was given to see. It makes me want to cry, actually. I mean, I'm feeling the emotion of it. So I could see that how an implanted thought, a certain trigger word, a certain anything would be affecting these other people. And they would be off on a program. And that's really, even today, those that have risen out of that and are out there speaking, I feel, I could be very wrong, but I feel that a lot of programs are running. And a lot of humans are following these people or these stories thinking they're going to find an answer out there through somebody else, through some story, through some ET race, through somebody else. And that to me became a sort of a calling that I needed to watch myself, that the answers are inside here. It's the integration process. And that's why I became much more involved with the Earth Empaths, where I needed to pull my energy into that, is to helping others become empowered and integrate and not go chasing all these stories. That's, yeah. And
Beautiful. Beautiful. So, so then, in a way, you discovered that in this beautiful desire to hold humanity and help midwife a new Earth, you were actually, until you awoke to this, a tool for the psychic vampires, and you were holding them in a harvesting vat, which is so much of what the distorted feminine is being cultivated for. And we're going to talk about that more, because often the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I know your intentions were totally pure, and you were very brave for realizing it, for pulling yourself out of a place that you had such a rich exchange, and for speaking your truth to the world, to anyone who will hear. So I really, from the bottom of my heart, want to thank you for standing up and speaking this, because a lot of the alternative forums and places are harvesting tanks and harvesting pools. And so we need to engage in the research and the manifestation of creating truly safe places. And how do we make a safe place for anybody in the middle of this world where we are all to some extent compromised? Which so okay, Earth Empaths. Now this group of people have started to voyage into some extraordinary areas. I know a lot of these people do have telepathic and extrasensory gifts, but I also am aware that those gifts are opening up to many of us on the planet. And this is why I'm so excited that you'll be doing Earth Empath groups on Rise Multiversity, because I know that there are many people out there that want to be part of the change and the shift and have these abilities. And you stumbled upon, and other people venturing into the shamanic journey. I know Kelly Lachey is we're working in EU with help fostering our magical selves. But I think it's so important for us to understand the real power that we hold. And I think that you are discovering that with this group of women. And I would love you to share a bit about what exactly you're doing there.
I would be very happy to. And I do want to state one thing, and it's an interesting thing because we are brainwashed, we are suppressed, we are many, many things, and we're coming out and we're emerging from that. And one of the things that helped me the most in my own journey here to this moment was that no matter what I have gone through in my lifetime and the many challenges that I've had and the many adversarial forces that I have had to deal with, I came to a place of saying, wow, what a creation I'm a part of, and I have created these aspects of myself, these reflective parts of me, so I could learn and grow. I'm not a shaman. I would say, to myself, I say, well, I'm just somebody, but I did discover something in me, and I believe in all of me, that it's inherent in all of us, right? It's not like there's these special people out there that are gifted with these special abilities that, we need to hear what they're saying. No, it's more of this journey inside of ourselves that we all have it, and it's the rescuing of, the remembering of, the recognition of, that just being human, a spiritual being in this human vessel right now is such a gift. It gives us such a deep exploration. So just saying that, Sina, that, it's not like I came to this through following a life path. It didn't come to me like some people come to it. They're born and they're awakened to their gifts immediately. They know maybe who they are or their mission, but we all come to it in our own way. And so when we found each other, the women that are now under the name or the banner of Earth Empaths, which is a much larger banner than the few of us that are gathering, we found that when 2 or 3 of us came together, that the field augmented, that we actually empowered each other, that we held for each other, that we, and so that way that each of us would find that we could speak our truth. Each of us would find that we could speak what we were seeing, feeling, and hearing, and that to our surprise and our amazement and our joy, that by doing that, we actually realized that we were perceptually expanding, and that became the real basis and the fundamental of it. So yes, I can talk about some of the things that we've discussed.
Well, I know that you would tell me if I'm saying this correctly or incorrectly, because I don't want to misrepresent it in any way. But I know that you would, I don't really like the remote viewing word, but whatever you would travel to places, you'd see the interference in areas, you'd help to clear things, you'd help to strengthen positive in situations, or with earth movements, with manipulations, we're under such attack and compromise in the artificial matrix with AI, and many of us feel hopeless that we can't do anything. So what would you say to that, Christine? Can we do anything?
You gave me that word, the hopeless word. No way. So yeah, we do. We feel hopeless. We feel belittled. We feel, the most common thing I hear people say, when I try to stand up and speak my truth, and out there in the 3D realities, and they almost without a doubt say, "But we're only human," or "What can one person do?" And that statement is just, it sends my energy bubbling up. There's a lot we can do, and this is what we discovered. What we discovered, and I will put it under the title of discovery, or what we remembered, because the closer I get to my essential self, the more I know that's always been, and I'm remembering. So I'm remembering the dream, as it were. We started to realize that we would just hold the field. What we would do, we'll get together, and it's a resonance, or it's a harmonic that's established with whoever's participating in that moment, and we listen. Right, and it's a deep listening, and then one or other, or maybe even simultaneously, will understand there's some place on the planet in some aspect that needs a resonance, the resonance that we're holding, We were very, very active during the time that they wanted to start the war in Syria. We were called there over and over again. And what we would find is that we would find earth resonances. Sometimes we would find ancient sites. Sometimes we would find, and we would move into that space, and it would be like, because we were there, we were augmenting that. So that augmentation of that harmonic resonance, and sometimes it was harder than that. I found myself one day right in the middle of the field with all the Syrian rebels, and I came down there. Now, this might sound fantastic to some that hear me, but I came down there holding this mother energy. Like, she just went boom right on the ground, and she stood in front of all these men with their black turbans and their masks, and she just was like emanating to them the female, the love, their daughters, their mothers, and I literally felt them change, right? And I felt one soldier saw the presence, and this is not personal at this point, but the presence, and just decided to do something different, right? And I don't know how much the work we did actually started to change that field, but all we know in the outcome, and it wasn't just our group, we were aware of groups from all over the planet that were working that, bringing peace and standing up against the idea of war and murder and whatever. So you stand there, and however you stand in your resonance and your own authentic self there. That war didn't happen. That's all we know. Other times we've worked with the Telluronic, the energy forces of Gaia herself, through her volcanic fields, when she's starting to balance herself and just be there with the harmonic with her. And it feels like I'm doing this, but this is what it feels like on the energy fields. Like somehow the presence of human beings holding the field with her helps her balance, because she comes up through us in this sense of joy. That's when we always would know our session was over, because we would burst into laughter and joy. And then we would know that we're just part of this incredible thing that we call life, creation, Earth, Mother, and when I talk about it this way, I don't know if I can admit it so well, but it is such a beyond anything that anybody could, going to a movie or getting a new car or any of the things that we think that bring us a certain amount of satisfaction and joy. There's just nothing that compares to being able to be part of something so grand as this life form that we're living on.
Beautiful, Christine. Really beautifully said. And so we have the capability to co-create this transition to a kinder and gentler ascension, however you look at it. I look at it as the transformation of the planet, that we're working directly with her, and that these things are real, and that there's a new awareness, and women such as yourself are getting to the place where they're cracked open enough, where enough of their own shadows have been made conscious, where enough of the false structure and the artificial structures have been demolished in some ways or deconstructed, that this emergence is allowed to really have a potency. And I want to talk about that and go a little bit into your own life, because I feel that, I know that anyone can do that kind of work, and I know that it's potent, but it is more potentized, I feel, as we are embodied, as the fracturedness, the defensiveness, the shutdownness, the contracts to the mind matrix and the God virus are dismantled, that the potency becomes a lot more embodied and anchored and forceful in the most gentle and loving way. And I love to bring people on that can model that journey through the Shadowland, what you've gone through to arrive at this place. And I love that you are not putting yourself up as the next Messiah. And I am certainly not putting you up as the next Messiah. And, you know, but I'm singing your praises because I see an authentic person that's been to hell and back numerous times and is coming through it, like I keep feeling Joan of Arc right now, but you know, that's the old martyr archetype, and I'm not trying to reinvent her, but that is also the female force rising. And there's going to be so many challenges as this force emerges, because we're all dazzled by the love and the divine feminine and the compassion and a lot of the new age mumbo jumbo is really over jumping what it really takes to potentize this force for the good. And so are you willing to share with us the wild ride okay, I want to actually take it to, I want to start with your dazzlingness in that people, especially men, have recognized you as something to do with the Mary energy. But can you just share with us how that's manifested? We're going to start there, and then we're going to take it further.
Yeah, well, okay. I mean, that's kind of a coming into that energy or discovering that energy is the darker transitions that I did in my lifetime. And however, it's, let me see.
Well, however you want to take it, I totally honor however you want to bring this forward.
Okay, sit with it for a moment, because what I'd like to say when you say the Mary energy or the mother energy, or we can say the Magdalene, when we look at the feminine, we're looking at many, 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 many aspects of her. She's the multidimensional being. She's the multi-creator. She's the creatrix. She's so many things. And, you know, when you talk about the Mary energy, what comes to me, what I feel, I feel in the embodiment within my own particular body is actually a certain detectable light. And it's a radiant light. I don't know how to describe it. I've only recently been able to actually feel it, see it, perceive it within my own form. Now, I'm not talking about Christine Anderson and all the things she's went through, because this is something that I believe is in each and every one of us to discover. But when I speak of radiance, right, one thinks of many of the imageries in the iconography of Mary, where she's standing at the top of the hill and she's got her arms and her hands open and she's radiating this light. Well, she's an information field, and she's also always there. And I think for us humans that, this is coming to me as I'm speaking with you right now, Sienna, I think for most of us in our fractured state of being, on our non-integrated state, we don't know what it means to have somebody, something, some sentient beauty always there for us. And yet she's always here. You know, she is here, and she does invite us to discover that energy within ourselves.
Yes, and also she will be used as probably as one of the false light messiahs, which is actually what you were getting set up to do, and which you're breaking, and you've been attempting to break. Yeah. So that's why you have authority to tell us about this journey, because you embody an archetypal presence of her. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And men have been dazzled by you. I mean, people have recognized you. People have bowed down before. I mean, you've had these experiences. Maybe you're a bit shy to talk about it, where people just recognize this energy and want to worship you or buy you diamond rings, whatever. It may have been short-lived, but it has been a recurrent pattern, right? That energy manifests through you.
So now that's a way I can jump into. I was even saying this morning in my contemplation in the morning, as you know, I have the pleasure of getting up right as the sun's rising for quite a long time. I realized that the distortion fields, and we can go back to the example I was using earlier, where it's so obvious in the outer everyday life that we're living. There's big distortions, and you get into the new age or the alternative community, and the distortions are even finer. And I'm getting into a place within myself where they're even finer still. So there is a distortion, and I understand that. And my journey has been moving through these different states of distortion. So it's a very fine line, you see, because I recognize, and I've remembered through my past life incarnations, I've had many, many really very strong remembrances that this female field, okay, this female mystery, this whatever we want to call it, and you know, she, I mean, think of all the ways that the female's been depicted on the planet. I mean, she's the tantric queen, she's the seductress, she, you know, all the dances that are through the indigenous, you know, different cultures, through Hinduism, all of that. She's been multifaceted. She's, you know, done all of her things. And what I found in my own memory was that I actually, many, many years ago, had through I will call him a dark master, okay, just for lack of a better word. I was involved with a group of people. I was empowered during that time. And all of that female energy came up through me, and I could feel it in me. And I mean, it was an amazing time in my life where I became aware that my thoughts were making creations. I was influencing people. I was manipulating them, even without even wanting to. A certain movement of my body was actually being a seduction for somebody else. Some thought that I was having was going out into the field and being reflected back to me in a very way. And so it was power. It was power. It was very powerful. And that power is actually the thing that we're the most afraid of, and the thing that we've actually misused the most. And so when you're not an integrated being yourself, when your consciousness is not lined up, okay, when you don't really know yourself, that power can be used. And it is used. It's used by others. It's used, in my case, it was being used by certain males in my life. It was being used to keep me from knowing myself even. So I went through a very, very, very deep and very dark night of my soul as I started to realize that, right? I realized how co-opted that power had been, and how seductive that power is, and how we're not prepared to really deal with true power. And that to me becomes the crux of the matter on planet Earth, is people are fed power and then they misuse power because they don't really know who they are. So we all in certain way are but puppets for some other master.
We have been, yes, yes. And this is where we come together with your work with Earth Empaths and my work with Shadow Genesis through Rise, Multiversity. We align in holding a microscope up to the distorted feminine and masculine, and how do we cleanse, purify, transcend, alchemize, and reintegrate so that we can be potentized in this time and not be running away from this thing that has been so much. It's shocking. I mean, in my book, Stealing the Moon, I go into it in great depth as well. You know, lifetime back in Egypt, the Nefertiti thing with Akhenaten, and the cult of Aten, and really consolidation of the dark forces, where when she died, you know, she had her hands crossed on her chest. I actually relived this after 5 years of primal therapy. Of course, they didn't believe in past lives. I was laying, and I felt it was a sarcophagus, and I woke up and I'm crying, screaming, like I thought I was serving the light, but I was serving the darkness.
Wow. Yeah, those are the hardest things to confront in yourself. I mean, we can all confront that we've perhaps lied, or we've cheated, or we've done, you know, all the things that we as humans have, you know, but to actually and recall for yourself that when you thought you were serving the highest light, that you had actually been co-opted. And I've had similar experiences, Sienna, as you well know. And that is the finer lining of you know, where one person, and this is how you said the word potentized, right? And really, we can say potentized or we can say power. And so many of us are kept now from embracing the true potency that we have, this true potentiality that we have, because we really are afraid of our power. Quite often, if not, I couldn't say quite often or most of the time or almost all of the time or whatever, it's because we abused, or that power was usurped in us and it was used for nefarious means. And so we somehow play this, game between, well, if I just think enough good thoughts, if I just do enough good acts, then everything's going to change. But really that's not the case, because we haven't walked into our complete ability. We haven't really grasped that we can and we are the change agents, that we are powerful beings. We are powerful beyond what we can currently imagine. And we can't walk into that, or I can't, or we really can't in our true authentic self until we've gone through the purification. That means the wisdom factor. We have to recall what took us into these darker usages. What and how did we get usurped? How were we manipulated? What happened there? And when we can recall that and we can remember that, then we have what I call wisdom, or what we can commonly know as wisdom. So that means our consciousness now has a compass.
Yes, and the way that I'm going to be working with that in Shadow Genesis is through the psychodrama, through the subpersonalities, because what I learned from Aisha when she was alive was that these energies are all within us. These archetypes are all within us. And as they're lodged as feeling states, as energetic templates. And until we actually experientially tap into them, they are controlling us from the shadows. So it doesn't help just to know it in our head or to analyze it, even though that's the first step, is to perceive it and become aware of it. But the alchemy is actually to embody it. And then whatever state we're in, we begin to read the energy and we begin to navigate. We know when we are in our heart soul essence. We know when there's another energy in the field. We discern and differentiate because we're moving through these energies. And I will be doing that in the Shadow Genesis through Rise, and you will be doing that through Earth Empaths, because it's an incredible exercise in discernment as you're all moving through the planet and landing in different spots and seeing what's going on, and everyone's taking a read and feeling it and sensing it, and it's all experiential, but you're concurrently getting a similar thing. And we have these capabilities, which is the beautiful thing and the hopeful thing, but it takes really a level of being cracked open. Now, I also would like you to mention a bit about your past, because you were a very successful and ambitious business person. You weren't always on this journey, right?
Well, yeah, on one way or another, I probably always was. I just want to, before I will go into that, but I want to give an example of these templates, because I think this is something that's really essential, that we as human consciousness start to understand that we are templated. We actually were templated. The world is a template. And so when you say Joan of Arc, and a lot of people have said to me at certain stages that they feel me as Joan of Arc. So my experience with that Joan of Arc was not me, I'm Joan of Arc. I think we also get lost sometimes. We have a past life recall, or we resonate very clearly with one of these templates, that they're actually overlaying templates on all of us. It doesn't mean you were Joan of Arc, but that energy of Joan of Arc is so powerful. And yet, actually jumping a little back towards Avalon, as I was coming out of that energy in me came up. She was like on a horse, and she was shielded, and she was, with the sword of truth raised, the banner, and she was going forward into battle. All right. And this was actually living through me. I was feeling this. I was living it on a very visceral level. Maybe I was sitting in my room, but I was living that energy. And then all of a sudden I stopped, and and this will tie things together, and I realized, and I held that energy, and I listened to that energy, and I felt her, and I felt her passion, and I felt her almost craziness, and I felt her intelligence, and I loved her so much. And then I looked at the lesson behind that, and something in me said, no, you've already done that. We've already done that. We don't do that anymore, because what Joan of Arc ultimately did was she took a lot of other beings to their own slaughter. She brought a huge force of beings of people behind her, right?
Yeah, she was into war. She was into the template of.
And even though it was passion of truth, and it was passion of showing, bringing forth what the church was doing, and all of those things, I realized that, so in your feeling states, and I know the work that you do to some extent, is that when you hold that energy and you actually hold it long enough, that energy is there to teach you. But so often we run off with it because it's so powerful. Again, it's so powerful. So I just, acknowledging that. So having relived that in my body, the alchemy is the right term. I alchemized it within myself. I'm very aware of that.
Well, we're in a bridging time when the templates, archetypes, patterns, gods, goddesses, archetypes, subpersonalities. I mean, there are so many. We are such a cast of characters. There are so many. We have the ancestors in us. There are different embodied. We've made contracts where different alien races, different interdimensional beings are living in us as us. When we were heavily traumatized, we cut these deals. So we are a cast of characters. Every human being is, and of course they've made it. The powers that be have made it like, don't talk to yourself. And if you're a cast of characters, you're schizophrenic, you need medication, or that this is disease. And it certainly can play up and be very dysfunctional, and that's not good for the sheeple. So, we get medicated and told to calm all that down, whereas it is the fertile soil of our soul alchemy. All of them contain treasures. All of these shadow characters are not evil. So much of our potential had to be in the shadows all of this time. Our sexuality, sensuality, intuition, all of these interdimensional powers. This is our potency. This is what they don't want us to reboot and support each other in the awakening, because this is what's going to anchor us in the organic control grid. This is where we disengage. We no longer need their toys, because it's not the only thing on offer. All of these images of power and creation and that are all part of the perversion and the pornography and the vampirization of our souls that have us entranced with the AI, they lose their luster. When you start journeying in the way that you're talking about, it is so dynamic that you get that we are the greatest show on earth.
We are, I mean, even with the AI and with the movies and with whatever, we still are the greatest show on earth. It's just now time for us to take back our responsibility for what our creation is actually looking like.
So when you start your Earth Empath group, or you do it regularly every week, but when you expand it to include other people, what might others expect if they put their toe in that pond with you?
Yeah, well, you've had your experience with Embody You. We've had our experience with Earth Empaths. There are groups all over right now that are having a similar experience. And I'll go back to what I started to say earlier, is that when we gather, right, ego's calm, ego's at the outs, they're not they're not playing on this field right now. They can watch it. But when we open up a field, it's actually, I want to say there's a density to it. It's an information intelligence field, right? It doesn't have an agenda. Right? It's an experiential field from which we can partake and participate in. And so it's an experiential. What we would like to do, and we've talked about it, is hold that field open. And so that anybody that comes into it will start to feel it, It does have an action. I know you've felt that. I know sometimes that somebody will remember something that's been long repressed. Sometimes somebody will burst into tears. Sometimes somebody's long lost mother will come in. Sometimes the group itself will just start emanating. We do a lot of work. Recently, we've been communing with the whales and the dolphins. They're here on the planet for us. So sometimes we'll go in with a specific intent, especially CERN or a HARP or some of those really invasive frequencies that are on the planet right now, trying to stop us from this process, this very beautiful, some people say ascension, I don't know what word to put on it, but we all know, if you're tuned in right now, right, if you've done some of the work, you've gotten rid of some of your shadows, you've taken down some veils, we're all picking up something and we're tuned to it. So it's an amplification of that field and finding out a discovery. Also, let's not take out the element of play, of discovery, of wonder, and we'll see. We will see in a more with more people where this takes us, right? And I want to say one thing that in the group, in the way that you've done so beautifully on Rise, Sienna, and I know other people are doing this on different websites now, of opening up these interactive online conference rooms, right? So we're not just talking heads. It's not somebody just pouring forth their knowledge. Well, that's wonderful, man. I mean, I get so much from these incredibly intelligent people on the planet right now that are putting pieces together. This is an interactive, right? You get to participate in it. And so those that are timid quite often don't want to say their truth, or they can't quite speak it yet, or they're not sure what reaction they might get from the world outside. Perhaps they've been severely smashed for trying to speak their truth. In that space, what happened to all of us was that somebody would say something, you'd go, wow, I was seeing that too. And somebody else would say something else, or they would bring in a visual to it. And the other people in the room would go, wow, I'm perceiving that also. And so it was very empowering in a very natural, organic way.
Yes, yes. And it's interesting, sad really, that what you were saying at the beginning of this interview, that people are sensationalized, magnetically attracted to the drama and the story, the negativity. If there's some big ET monster that's just been discovered and this and that, everybody's like looking because it's like the coolest story, and they're hidden, and they're watching because we have been trained to be voyeurs, to actually not have a life, but to live through these experiences. And I would really encourage people to put their toe in these waters, both through Earth Empaths, through Embody You, which is a process group, through Rise, through coming to the webinars, even the live interactive webinars, or wherever you can have connection, because this is how we're going to really strengthen the organic grid. This is how we're going to strengthen our souls and move forward. It's not a codependency. It's not we have to have each other. We are sovereign. We are individuated. But at the same time, when we have this deep commitment to holding the field for one another, it's a whole new world. And we do heal. And what needs to come up in us does come up. And it doesn't have to be, I'm the therapist, you're the patient, you're the dumb person that doesn't have a clue what's going on, and I'm the wise person that you're paying me the big bucks to help you. No, we're trying to get a non-hierarchical paradigm and access the healing that everyone possesses and create community. Create a new brotherhood and sisterhood that's based on those principles with high integrity. And also a sense of empowerment. And I've seen you, that Joan of Arc thing, I see you transmuting that. And you can be a lioness or a jaguar. I think it's a lioness, where you're just really standing and you're not going to take anything. But I mean, we had that encounter with Queen Bitch between us. We were creating a humanitarian project. We were working intensively for weeks on end. It was very intense, and we felt the distorted feminine. That's a whole other show. But we felt her come in and push everybody's buttons, polarize us. And I mean, I remember you just screaming at me that day, going, "That is not you, and I'm not taking it, and we're not going to give you any energy. Go play in someone else's playground because we're done." But it was an incredible experience for me because I've been exploring the dark feminine for a very long time now. But in the sisterhood, we had you, me, and Becca, and we were all tracking the energy together, and we all stood firm that I'm sorry, that we're not going to let this destroy this project. And the energy cleared because we made the commitment to clear. We made the commitment to see where did it attach, what part of me allowed this in, and we did that inner work to clean that up. And it allowed me to go much deeper than I have ever been able to because there was 3 of us holding it, looking it right in the eye. And so I know that this is a huge key, that we have to come out of the closet, stop just listening to the radio, and come together in these groups and get this, and be able to hold this field. And we are the change in that way.
Well, we call it in the group, we've come up with certain words and abilities that we speak to each other. One word can say a lot, but it's called fierce love. That's what we've called it. And it is fierce and it is lioness-like. And, you know, when I feel that energy comes up, I basically, and I've said this to other friends of mine, and I say it to myself, all right? I recognize when I'm talking to somebody I hold very dear that I'm also speaking to myself. And the biggest thing we have on the planet right now is victim. Victim comes out to play all along the way until you come to a place where you claim yourself and you say, I can no longer, I am 100% responsible no matter what happened to me. And we didn't touch on that today. When I started to feel myself come back, she came back online, all right? She started to line up within me. Was when I said I'm 100% responsible for my creation. Therefore, I disclaim all victimhood. And I don't care if it was ET intervention or the rotting of a curse on me or the hands of a black magician or a vampire or any of the other things that I've experienced. The thing that really stood there with me was that. And so I'm fierce with it because I don't want to play with people's victims. I don't want to be the savior. I don't want to be the one that feels a little bit better because she's got it together and you're suffering right now. It's a sly one, okay? That one slides in quite often, I think, in healing groups and healing modalities. You know, like you said earlier, the therapist and the client, right? Well, no. You know, I prefer not to have that. So I am very much that way. And sometimes I don't know how to handle it. Sometimes these energies are very, very powerful, potent in their way. They kind of snake into a room or they snake into one of us, you know. But if you just hold your ground, and it's another thing I've discovered for me is like some days where there really feels very dark or the doubts come in or there's some fears or, you know, there's, you know, I get bombarded like we all do with, you know, electronic interference. It's all there. But I've determined that if I just hold where I am, right? I don't go to battle. I don't go, you know, into victim. I don't allow, sometimes there's days on end where I just say to myself, hold the ground you've gathered, right? Just hold it, okay? Allow whatever is to be here. Don't give it your energy, but hold where you are. And then I find that, you know, the forces come back in, all the benevolence that are here too. They're working all the time. As much as there's dark force on the planet, there is a huge growing body of benevolent force. There are, you know, there's extra dimensionals in the, you know, on the dark side. Well, there's a huge amount of interdimensionals on the benevolent side. You know, it's kind of all happening right here on planet Earth right now. Remind ourselves what a great gift, what a incredible honor it is to be here right now. You know,
Well, you're really the antidote for some of these forums because the sensationalism. Tell me if you concur from your experience with all of these very damaged people that are awakened to all the interdimensional interference. This becomes really the greatest sci-fi movie you could be at, and we get addicted to it. I mean, we want to hear about the next ET race, and it's compelling, and that is our downfall. That we become more enamored with this compelling sci-fi drama that's unfolding all over, then we are in love with ourselves and that we believe we have something that dynamic. And certainly the new age doesn't really create anything compelling. I mean, the whole false light agendas are really quite boring. They're kind of milquetoast. There's not a lot of juice there. So integrating our shadows, integrating the underworld aspects, and that fierceness and the intensity. And it reminds me of flamenco music that we were listening to the other night, and the expressions of the soul around the world of people who haven't sold out their soul to this corporatocracy and this bleaching of ourselves in this white world of plastic suppression. That when we allow that intensity, our sexuality, our sensuality, our fire, the fierceness, but we temper it with the love and the balance and holding this space for all sentient beings, not just our egoic, wounded selves, then we have something that's really as exciting as all of this crazy crap that we're addicted to. But it takes an excavation. Now, I know we're running a little longer than we thought, but I would like them to know when you were like this incredibly ambitious in the matrix diva that created all that stuff, because you're not just a new age woo-woo that only gets off on interdimensional traveling. You were very anchored in this dimension and you were very successful. And I think that's an important piece for people to understand.
But I tell the story. To me, it's not so extraordinary, but I know that when I was talking to you about it, how it affected you. But I will, because I was a disassociated child. I was out of place in this world, like so many of us are. And I'm sure there's traumas and all of that went with my childhood. I determined at a fairly young age that I needed to find a place where I felt safe on the planet. And so I determined that I would fit in. I mean, that was like primary for me. It was primary motivation, fit in. Find a place where you can fit in, where you can create an identity, where you can feel safe. Control comes quite a bit into that, So I developed businesses. I actually found I had a talent for being able to see what people liked. I had an aesthetics that people enjoyed. My sense of color and balance and all of that came into play, and so I became very successful. I started a line of clothing in Mexico. I had several boutiques at one point. I had a beautiful, beautiful workshop with wonderful women that worked with me, and we did our own patterns. And so I actually had a very, very full expression of myself that way. And it became successful. I mean, but I never had greed. That wasn't really part of it. I had many opportunities along the line where, somebody wanted to franchise my business or and every time I would even approach getting a little bit bigger, going more corporate, going more, I would get sick. I would literally get sick. So I never could make that move. But I had a rich life. I lived in a beautiful town. I found my business here. I was very involved with the community, the Mexican people. I had a lot of friends. And then I started a little bit more on my spiritual search, right? After I'd accomplished that fitting in aspect of that respect that I got, that identity that I had forged, people respected me, and some things started to shift in my world as I started to ask very seriously. It came up through my consciousness, well, who am I? Is this all that there is, right? Why am I here? What am I doing here? How did I get here? Where am I going? You know, those are those deeper soul questions that emerge, and quite often I probably emerge in everybody at some point, and quite often we don't really want to answer them, so we just let them go.
Well, the thing is, a lot of people don't ever experience great success because you were pretty close to being a millionaire. You did acquire that much wealth, and you had beautiful clothes, and you know, you had 1,000 templates for stuff, and you had a lot of stuff, right? You had the cars, you had the jewelry, you had what a lot of people are trying to get, is what I'm saying. You had it, and that wasn't enough for you.
No, and I did. I had it. I had a loving family. I had loving friends. I even had, started my more serious spiritual journey. So exactly that. See, and I had come to a place where I was very affluent. I'd reached a place, not ultra wealthy at all, but I could easily, have what I wanted. I had enough that I could give to other people. You know, I got a lot of pleasure out of helping other people, helping other artists get going and starting businesses. So yes, I would feel I was very accomplished in the way that I felt like I needed to be accomplished within the matrix. And what really happened for me through those soul questions was, and I remember the day, because I was going into a deeper place in myself. I was, I was walking in the mornings at dawn, and I was experiencing another aspect of myself that wanted to come forward. And I woke up one morning, I was in my early 40s, and I'm in my house in the country that I had built, and I started crying. I literally cried, because what I saw was that all that I had, I was going to let go of it all. I was going to start to transmute it. I was going to take some new step in my life. And so that's when I really started into the deeper part of my search. And I got involved with a lot of things that probably is, too broad, or, we can talk about maybe the dark side another time, right? Because my transit through my soul self, I had to go deep into the dark. And that's where I said, I've had several dark nights of the soul, not just one. I've had many. I've had multiples of them. So all the same time, and this will probably be where I will try to weave this in, is that we are aspects in the reality that we live in. This is my discovery through all of this, was that there's the dark pole, or the negative and the positive pole. Well, I went way down in, not because I was doing dark action or dark things, but I had to experience the dark side again. I had to really experience how it works, how it gets manipulated, witchcraft, energy vampires. I really entered into that. Unknowingly, it wasn't what I was looking for, but that's where my soul journey took me. And then coming back out of this absolute devastation of the absolute dark, and coming back and realizing that what I started with, that one radiant light force that actually emanates through me, right? And that became my only guide for the very longest time. So yes, I left behind my family. I left behind my home. I left behind my businesses. I literally consciously started breaking all of that down. It was an extraordinarily painful process. But something in me knew that I needed to do that to get to where I needed to go on the next leg of my journey.
Do you think if you had not done that, you would be in the same place you are right now?
That's a question I ask myself quite often, and honestly, I don't have the answer for that. I do think that, like a compass, the soul sets itself when it comes in. I do believe this now. We set ourselves. So if I hadn't made that one left-hand turn at that point, I probably would have found another one. But yes, I do think the journey into the dark was really necessary. Yes, I do.
And now what is happening in terms of your family and the community and all of that?
Well, I did something, and like many of us of this generation that were, call us the baby boomers or whatever you want to call us, the first wave, whatever. Like many of us, I studied many different, early on in my life, I was attracted to many different teachers. One of the ones that I really resonated with was through the stories of Carlos Castaneda and Don Juan, right? And so I had a very strong indication that I needed to break these lineages and these bondages, these unwritten contracts that I had, specifically with my family. And so I very consciously was doing that. I was cutting them, I was breaking them, I was transmuting them. And it's a very painful process. It's not anything that's fun, because the farther I would get away, that the more they'd want to pull me back. So for 7 years, I had no contact with anybody in my family, and that included my mother, my father, my brothers, my daughter, right? And that wasn't like a per se conscious choice I made. It started out as a conscious choice of trying to clean up these lineage lines, because I started to see that a lot of the things that we're all being influenced by come down through our ancestors, or come down through certain lineages. And I so much wanted my daughter to be free of it. I knew actually at a very young age that I was going to break it. And the miracle for me was, and the teaching story of this was, that because I followed my own truest self, my own truth, my own soul self, because I something in me took me to that. It was bravery. Sometimes it was just some energy or some person whacking me and, taking me off into Netherlands for a while. When I came back, because I did come back at the help of I will say, a dear friend. I came back into the life of my daughter, into the life of my mother, into the life of the village that I had formated this identity in. And what had transmuted during that time was that my mother had made some of the deeper spiritual growth patterns within herself, because she didn't have me there, right? She didn't have me there to live her life through. She went through some very painful things, no doubt. I mean, that's very hard for us as beings to think that what we choose might cause another pain. But because she embraced her own pain, she went through her own spiritual catharsis. I walked back into the room with my mother, who I could barely stand to be in the room with, and I was absolutely in love with her, to my own astoundment.
Wow.
My own surprise. I mean, I cry with it, because the first time I saw her after all that time, I just wanted to hold her. I loved her so much. Right? So what happened, well, I could say in my mental mind says, yeah, I broke a lot of these old patterns. I broke a lot of our karma. I withdrew from that. And in doing so, it allowed her freedom too.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's so important for us to understand. And I've definitely get that you would not nearly be able to midwife your Earth Empath work now at the level of connectedness or pure intent or fierce love, because you just wouldn't have those aspects of your soul anchored and grounded, because the whole journey was a soul retrieval. And as painful as it was, it allows you again to come back as a potent force. And this return of the feminine is not just a joyride and, oh, we're all divine and we're so beautiful and I'm a tantric goddess and I just ooze love and beauty because I'm female. It's like, wake up, people. There's a lot more to really manifesting this huge love field that is just growing stronger every day. But there are levels of initiation. And if we don't go through them, we don't get the goodies. We don't get to embody that. There's a justice returning to the planet. And the justice is to face and to come to understand the polarities of our being, so we don't keep repeating the past. And you are a poster child for that journey. I know that you are far from perfect, and so am I, and none of us are done at all, and we don't but I am so honored and delighted to be your friend and to have you be joining Rise and bringing Earth Empaths to Rise, because I sense that there's a growing number of people all across the planet that are really ready to be held in this way and to understand. And I think that you're on the forefront of something that could really, really serve the shift and the change right now. So I really want to thank you for that. Are there any closing remarks you'd like to make first? And how do people reach you? I know we don't have the whole Earth Empath up on Rise, but perhaps they could contact you directly, and we could start building a list so that when we get that all up and running, which shouldn't take that much longer, that we don't lose anyone.
Well, this is something, the word that comes to me is collaboration. And, Earth Empaths has a little website, and we have a little forum and all of that. But we'll put up the links on this video and on this podcast. And also, what we've talked about is doing through Rise's scheduling, maybe a once a month webinar, open up the room, allow people to come in and experience it and create it together. This is a co-creation. This is the beauty of it. It isn't about gurus and somebody knows better than you and some ascended master is going to come down and tell you what to do. This is about our co-creation. And for me, there's nothing more joyous than to be in that and to know that, having gone through the things I've gone through in my life, I've actually allowed myself to be here. We keep ourselves from ourselves, our limitations, our doubts, our fears, we keep ourselves from it. So if anything else I could say is just, stand up with yourself. This is where we are. It's, one little thing. And then, when there are those out there that are saying, service to self or service to other, they've actually created a false paradigm right there by saying those two words, because you cannot be at service to other if you're not integrated in self. So, and by being of service to other, you're being of service to self and vice versa, once you've come to a certain state of integration. So it's not me or you, it's us.
Yes, and you, I have seen you so many times anchor the joy. And yes, there is a sense of, a lost sense in many people of really being able to embody their joy, their pleasure, the giving, receiving, that it satiates them, to use Kelly Lachey's word. She loves that word, and I love it with her. We are so starved. We are so depleted. We are so in our heads. And everything's always happening tomorrow. And we're running after this because we don't know how to be fulfilled. We don't know that orgasmic place that happens in a 3D is actually 5D. It's where we're headed. And I have experienced that as I've heard you do your groups and the place. I mean, you're up at like dawn and you're radiant and joyful, and you're holding that joy and you're doing it with a fierceness at the same time. To me, that is like the female really returning, that combination and insistence that it is going to be fun. Right. And if it's not, then move that energy out, because we're not taking it anymore.
Exactly. It's a dance, it's a song, it's a symphony, it's an opera, it's whatever we want to make it. You see that? I mean, why do we maintain this sense of limitation? It's time to break free. I mean, we're living in infinity and in an eternity, right? We have a long way to go. We're just getting started, baby.
Right on. And this won't be the last podcast we do. We may dive deeper into, there's so many things we could have dove into, but let's leave it here for now. How do they reach you, Christine Anderson?
Well, Christine at earthempaths.net. Easiest way to do it, and we'll write it out. And please do. Please, I'm very, very happy to hear from anybody. I know there's others that have expressed an interest. I'm so pleased and so thankful, Sienna, that you're going to open up through Rise an opportunity and a place for others to come join. Yeah, so join us. Let's see what happens. Let's make some magic together. Let's, as our good friend says, let's flip this baby. We're ready to take another ride.
Right on. Okay. Beautiful.
Love you. Love you all.
Love you all. Take care, people. We'll be back soon.